What is food waste? Food waste by definition is food that is edible but gets discarded by either consumers or retailers. You might wonder just how much food is wasted. Regarding food waste in America, roughly 40% of all food produced in America ends up in a landfill. This is like buying a couple bags of groceries and just tossing one of them straight into the trash. Food waste statistics show that globally, about a third of the world's food is wasted. That equals roughly 1.3 billion tons every year, which would be enough to feed all of the malnourished people on the planet. Besides this humanitarian issue, why is food waste a problem? When food is wasted, it means that the resources required to grow it, ship it, and package it were also wasted. This includes labor, agricultural resources, water, fuel, packaging, and money. And once all that food decomposes in a landfill, it will release methane, which is a greenhouse gas. So let's break down how this is happening and what we can do about food waste. First, let's talk about the difference between food waste and food loss. Food waste happens after the food has been harvested, so it occurs at some point in the supply chain between the time that the food is being produced and when it gets distributed. Food waste usually happens once food products arrive at the grocery store and thereafter. Who creates food waste? A retailer who sells the food, such as a grocery store, or a consumer who purchased the food can create food waste. So here's a quick recap and summary on what food waste is. Food loss, on the other hand, refers to edible food that is thrown away or actually lost during the stages of production, harvesting, storing, transporting, or processing the food. In developing countries, food loss from suppliers and processors is more of an issue, whereas in developed countries like the US, food waste happening at the consumer level is the bigger problem. So now that we understand the difference between food waste versus food loss, let's talk about one of the main causes of food waste. According to ecologist.org, in developed countries, the main contributor to food waste is consumers who make up 43% of the problem. The cycle of buying too much and then throwing food away could waste as much as 74 billion pounds of food a year. Now let's take a look at some food waste examples. There's expired food, which was once edible food that could have been consumed, but it went bad, like moldy bread or sour milk. Packaged food clearly indicates on the label an expiration date, but fresh fruits and vegetables will not be labeled. Even without an expiration, you'll usually be able to tell if a food has spoiled, as it will have a sour or bad smell, possibly a slimy or unusual texture. Meat products that have expired can be particularly harmful, so be sure to use them before the expiration date. Then there's stale or rotten food, things like stale bread or pastries and rotten fruit. This can also sometimes be missed visually, but it will likely taste awful and should not be consumed. Leftovers are another form of food waste. This is where we may have more on our plate than we can eat, or we just don't like the taste of something and it gets discarded. That's where it's nice to involve the whole family with menu planning to make sure everybody's taste buds are satisfied and happy with the meals we're serving. Getting kids in the kitchen with you and actually cooking is another way to prevent food waste. And our last form of a food waste example is fruits or vegetables that have blemishes or bad spots. Now, sometimes these can be cut out and you can eat the rest of the fruit or vegetable. Other times, even if you remove the bad spot, the rest of the fruit or vegetable might taste yucky, so you might have to discard the whole thing. Also, taking portion sizes that are realistic so that we ensure that we eat everything on our plate is another helpful strategy in avoiding food waste. Since households are the main contributors to global food waste, the good news is that there's a lot we can do about it. When growing up, you may have heard your parents telling you, "Don't waste food." Turns out that they had a good point. Thanks, Mom and Dad. So what are some food waste solutions? Here are 6 tips for reducing food waste. Number 1, keep a kitchen inventory. Regularly check your pantry, refrigerator, and freezer, especially before going grocery shopping. This helps prevent buying food that you already have and will inspire you to use up what's on hand. I like to label my leftovers in the fridge using some painter's tape and a Sharpie marker, or you could use a sticky note. Basically just put a little piece of the tape or sticky note on the food, put the name of what it is and the date. That way you won't keep any food past ideally 3 or 4 or 5 days at the most. Number 2, create a weekly meal plan and shopping list. When you plan out a week's worth of meals, it helps you to stay focused on what ingredients you truly need. Writing a shopping list based on that meal plan will prevent unnecessary impulse purchases. Number 3, reinvent leftovers. Yesterday's roasted vegetables can be pureed into a sauce. Leftover pasta can be made into a tasty salad. I often use leftover cooked rice or beans to make burgers or a soup. Get creative and you'll be surprised how much fun it is to reinvent leftovers. Store leftover food like casserole portions in the freezer to use them at a later time and prevent spoilage. Tip number 4, master food storage. To keep fresh fruits and vegetables at their best, it might be worth investing in some special produce bags like the Meyer green bags. I don't know how exactly they work, but as a personal chef and mom, I've used them for many years, and they really do extend the shelf life of fruits and veggies. Vegetables like potatoes, onions, and winter squashes do best at room temperature, kept in a basket or a wooden bowl. Sturdy vegetables like carrots and cabbages tend to last a long time in the refrigerator, so it's always a good idea to keep a supply of these on hand. In addition, be sure to check vegetables regularly for any signs of spoilage and trim it off right away to keep the vegetables lasting longer. At least once a week I go through and I look for little brown ends like this on the celery and I just snip those off. Or dark leafy greens like bok choy often will need to be trimmed up on the bottoms. And then you can just remove like any outer leaves that have gone bad so that the whole bunch doesn't go bad. And just discard this. You can compost this. There are a couple different ways I like to keep fresh herbs from spoiling. So the first method is to wrap them in a damp paper towel, and then you can just put this inside of a plastic bag. Of course, pull out any spoilage like this to keep the whole bunch from going bad. So that's one method. And then the other method is where you actually put the stems of fresh herbs like cilantro or parsley in some water. And you make like a little herbal bouquet, cover it with your damp paper towel if you like. And then your top layer is going to be your plastic bag, and then just put this whole thing right in the fridge like that. It will keep the fresh herbs really fresh. Tip number 5, support companies that are making a difference. There are mail order companies like Imperfect Foods that are offering solutions to food waste. Monthly subscription services deliver produce that might have minor imperfections or odd shapes and otherwise be discarded. There are also organizations such as the nonprofit group Rescuing Leftover Cuisine based in New York City. They're doing amazing work sharing excess food with people who are experiencing food insecurity. You can find out more about them by visiting rescuingleftovercuisine.org. Tip number 6, consider composting. If you have a backyard, composting is a great way to turn leftover fruit and vegetable scraps into rich soil that can be used to fertilize a garden. Even if you live in a town or city, small-sized compost bins and pails can be used. There are even composting systems involving earthworms where the earthworms help to eat up the food scraps. Sometimes farmer markets will even accept bags of compost as well. A bonus tip to avoid food waste is making pickles. If you have a lot of cabbage and different vegetables that are going to go bad, before they spoil you can create your own pickles like this homemade kimchi or sauerkraut as one great way to preserve your vegetables longer. So I hope you enjoyed learning more about what food waste is and how we can all help to make a positive difference. Comment below with your favorite tip for preventing food waste. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like and share it with a friend. And if you want to learn recipes using whole food ingredients, consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.